Okay, next on our list is Peter Moore with the City of Winter Park. He's going to talk about their microloan program for business owners and a couple other programs that Winter Park's doing.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you to the City of Mount Dora. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Mayor, for hosting us here. Really beautiful town. You know, and thank you, of course, to the FRA for putting together these informative sessions. Granted, you asked me to speak, so that might put a ding in your informative aspect of it, but well, bear with me. I normally stop when I hear snoring. So, you know, I guess since I'm not in Winter Park, I can say this, and I don't see any of my bosses here. I had this fateful moment about a year ago. I'm sitting in the car, and my lovely wife turns to my mother and says, "Where would you like to go shopping? You want to go to Winter Park or you want to go to Mount Dora?" My mom sits there for a minute and goes, "Ah, let's go to Mount Dora." Oh, knife in the heart from my own mother. So you'll be happy to know that she's coming next week, so you'll see her walking around the streets here shortly, and probably me looking sullen. But no, anyway, a beautiful city. You've done some really wonderful things up here, a great model for other areas. You know, Gus had asked me to come and talk about our microloan program. I said, oh, that's wonderful, but it'll be about a 3-minute discussion. Incentive programs that maybe haven't quite worked how we've wanted them to work. So thankfully, we've added our business facade matching grant program as well to that too, which has seen a little more success. And I think without further ado, I'll just kind of jump in. The microloan idea, I can't remember which country it was. I don't remember if it was Bangladesh or Nepal. There was a gentleman who was giving very small microloans to ladies that would go to market there, and it created this really amazing cottage lending industry, lifted up the whole local economy over there. And then a board member brought up at a meeting that wouldn't it be really neat if we had a program that would help small businesses and startup businesses in Winter Park kind of expand and do the same thing, you know, if they need help with a loan. So we decided we were going to start this program that would offer small businesses smaller loan amounts at attractive rates. You know, one of the things we often ran into was banks only lended at $50,000 plus, and if you were a small business that maybe just wanted to add some landscaping equipment, you might only need $5,000. So we were trying to set up that sort of system. So in 2007, in cooperation with Bank First and their socially responsible banking program, we launched the City of Winter Park's microloan program in our CRA. We provided $25,000 as a loan loss reserve, and Bank First leveraged that 10 times to give us a loan pool of $250,000. Applicants would apply to the city for funding, and then the city staff, the way it would operate is we kind of work as the gatekeeper for anyone coming. Obviously, Bank First doesn't want to deal with every business that perhaps wants lending, and so we would help vet that somewhat. And we kind of came up with the informal rule of if you were a business, if you'd been operating for at least 2 years and you had some sort of track record, then we would go ahead and pass you over to Bank First. But if you were a younger business or a startup, if you didn't have a business plan, we'd refer you to like the Disney Entrepreneurship Center, and we'd work with you to get a little more technical expertise into your model before we sent you over. And then lastly, once you referred to Bank First, you would go through their regular loan approval program to get in place and get the terms offered by the program. So the terms, you had to be a small business, you had to have 20 or fewer employees, and you had to be located in the CRA, and this is because our CRA was the funding source for this. I keep a sign over my desk that says CRA does not stand for cash right away. I completely sympathize with everyone's general funds who are coming after the CRA for innovative ways to spend that money, and so we went ahead and bonded a bunch of it this year anyway, so we might be the only idiots who did that, but actually it's worked out really well. But anyway, the loan amounts, $5,000 to $40,000. The term, 3 to 5 years, though Bank First is willing to be very, very flexible with folks on terms. And then the rates established were prime plus 1, or at the time it was fixed at 8.75. And then there's no closing costs or no fees charged to the borrower. This is actually taken out of the loan loss reserve that we provided instead. So it would slowly get eaten down over time as applicants apply. And then final approval rests with Bank First. So how has it gone? You know, we've got a couple of pros. The biggest thing from a city perspective at the time, we're a very small department. We were 4 people. We seem to get smaller every day, is manageability. And the main thing we were looking for was something where our staff time wasn't involved in the day-to-day management of this program. And doing this as a public-private partnership as opposed to just doing it as a CRA giving loans directly It allowed professionals to manage that loan process. I mean, I kind of looked around the room and I said, well, if we did this as a program, who would be responsible for it? And a lot of people looked at me and I said, yeah, absolutely not. This really helps make sure that the loans that are being given, someone who knows what they're doing is doing that. And it actually does a nice convenient thing for us as an economic development department, where we could be put in a tricky political situation where there was some other reason why this business should want to have a loan, maybe for political purposes, or we don't want to be seen as a department that's saying no to start up in new businesses when we're economic development. We're the ones that are supposed to be saying yes. So it gave us a little separation from that. In terms of cost and risk, very low cost. The maximum exposure is $25,000. That's what we lose if it goes downhill. And there's a very good chance if you saw early defaults that we could pull out of the program earlier than that. In terms of the loan pool, obviously $25,000 to get us 10 times more than that in an applicable pool was a big deal for us. We really couldn't front that kind of cash for a loan program if we operated it in-house. And then lastly, of course, there's no cost to an applicant who's applying. Now the con side, really almost all three of these can be tied together. We launched this in 2007. We're kind of on the end of the heyday that we're all aware of. And as we know, lending went in the toilet. There are plenty of deals being talked about out there, but none of them are getting financed. And we really saw our bank partner become less and less willing to give loans, which is entirely understandable. They're under a lot of pressure as well in terms of what they can accept. And unfortunately, in 3 years, we've only had one approved applicant. We've probably, it was a $40,000 loan, so it was at that max of that level. We've probably had about 10 folks that were interested over the time period. I would argue that about half of them probably chose not to do it, either because of the declining economy at the time or just their own personal business choices. And then the other half, a good chunk of those, I would argue, you probably wouldn't want to give a loan to anyway. They were startup business plans that probably weren't going to survive in this environment. So I don't disagree with any of the choices that have been made. It's just, it's been disappointing, I think, for us launching this program that we really didn't quite see the success we were hoping for. I mean, realistically, we were thinking 2 or 3 businesses a year would probably be all we could hope for under this. And then lastly, this kind of goes a little bit against some of the pros, but control. There were occasionally businesses that would cross our desk that we really wanted to get a loan, either because it filled a key location, it was a specific business type that we wanted, and we really would have liked to approve it. If we ran the whole program as ourselves, we could have just given them the funding. One of the things that we looked at when we looked at other cities, the concern that we had was the risk, as we looked at other cities that had done these lending programs and they had lost pretty much all their money, either because they made loans that really just didn't work out or they were just unlucky. So we've talked about a couple of things with what to do with this program. We looked at exploring smaller loan amounts. We talked to the bank about that. Really $5,000 is about as low as they're willing to go. They're certainly not making any money on this. They're doing this as a charity and a nice thing for us. So if we wanted to go less than $5,000, the CRA is going to have to finance that themselves, and then that gets to poor whippersnapper me making loan decisions. We've talked about closing the program. And really I feel that because of the lending environment that we've been in, it would be very unfortunate to shut it down at this point. It's really hard to say, is it the nature of how we set up this program, or is it the environment that we're in that's really hurt this? And so some of the things that we've been talking about is, we're not really getting that lending flexibility we were hoping for. We met with our bank partners not too long ago and we said, obviously we're getting those smaller loan amounts criteria met. Are we getting the willingness to perhaps give a loan to someone that may be a little more high risk? And the answer was, understandably, no. So, maybe if we see the lending environment improve over the next couple of years, then maybe that's something where we're going to maybe achieve more of what we want. But we've really got a lot of questions internally about how well this worked and how it's going to go forward. And I'm perfectly happy to say if something doesn't work, it doesn't work, and if it does, it does. And certainly if you all have any ideas or you're in the industry or you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them when we get to the question point.